Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio, podcast, and television show. I'm your host, Life Coach Myrna Young, and sitting in the guest chair today is Jason Redmond, Navy SEAL teacher, speaker, and coach. And I'm so excited for this conversation. You know, when I invited Jason to come on the show and he said yes, I like jumped up in the air like if I won a lottery. So
I am
So
on.
I'm gonna
Thank you.
I'm gonna borrow from Abraham Hickson says that I'm tuned in, tapped in, turned on for this conversation, and I hope you too, because today Jason and I are going to be talking about how to prepare for life's ambushes, and I'd never ever spoken to anyone on this topic before. Welcome, Jason.
Myrna, it's an honor to be on. Thank you. You have equally as many successes, if not more. And thank you for allowing me to come on and share my story and some of the knowledge I've gained over the years.
Yes, you're very welcome. Yes, I love good conversation. I love learning. So I learned right along with all my listeners and those watching on TV every week. So I'm excited for this conversation. Now, with that build up, let me introduce who Jason Redmond is. He's a retired Navy SEAL lieutenant, and he electrifies audiences around the world with his high energy presentations on leadership, failure, redemption, catastrophic injury, and his breathtaking journey to overcome all in the aftermath of wartime enemy ambush. And in the face of what he calls life ambushes during the years that followed. During his 21-year Navy career, Jason spent 11 years as an enlisted SEAL and 10 years as a SEAL officer, leading teams in combat operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. Today, he puts his vast experience and expertise to work as a speaker, coach, author, and trainer, helping individual teams and organizations of all types and sizes to define and implement lasting change, even in the wake or face of failure, crisis, and adversities. He has lived through it all at the highest level in his Navy SEAL career, from failures as a young leader that resulted in him being almost kicked out of SEAL teams, to redemption and leading teams in intense combat operations in Iraq, to being shot 8 times, including a round to the face, and nearly dying during an enemy ambush. Jason has lived the overcome mindset he now teaches others. He has done an incredible job of taking these lessons learned and making them relatable to teams, businesses, and organizations around the world. Yes, so let me give you guys a little background on how this interview came about. I was listening to the Lewis Howes podcast, The School of Greatness. And I tuned in because he was talking about interviewing 3 Navy SEALs. And since I read the book Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins, I have been impressed by Navy SEAL training. I'm thinking if I had a son, I mean, a younger son, I have an older son, he's 40. If I had a younger son, I would want to get him in that training. It is amazing. So I clicked on it. And of course, I heard Jason talking about something I had never heard before. And I was so blown away. He's talking about life ambushes, and I started counting mine. So, Jason, can you share your story of walking into an ambush as a Navy SEAL and the overcome mindset you had to survive, so that those that don't know anything about you can hear it from you?
Myrna, thank you, for an amazing introduction. You're hired. I'm gonna bring you all everywhere I'll go. You're gonna be my hype person. So yeah, I'm a super blessed individual. I just to survive what that ambush that night is definitely a little bit of a miracle. Some of it I'll say was me, and we'll talk about the overcome mindset and how that translates to other aspects of life. And some I give credit to the big man above. But the bottom line, it was an intense night. it was a night at the very end of our deployment, and Navy SEALs, one of our jobs is something we call direct action. We go after mid-level and high-level leaders across the battlefield. And that was one of our jobs when I was in Iraq, and we were tracking both Al-Qaeda and insurgent leadership across. With my troop, we were focused on the western province of Iraq. So a lot of people are familiar with Fallujah, Iraq, a very dangerous place. We were actually based out of Fallujah and tracking these leaders. And on September 13, 2007, we went after the #1 leader for the Al-Qaeda organization in the Anbar province, the western province of Iraq. A pretty dangerous guy, a guy we had been tracking all deployment. He had been responsible for, he ran multiple sniper cells, IED cells, attack cells. He had shot down, his cell had shot down a Marine Corps helicopter in the fall of 2006, killing the whole crew on board. The very first mission of our deployment was the first time we encountered him, and one of our fellow SEALs, Petty Officer Clark Swedler, was killed. Senior Chief Mike Day was shot, and between bullets and fragmentation, was hit 27 times in that very first gunfight. And so all deployment, we had been tracking him. And on that night, we were told they were going to be in a specific place, something we call a time-sensitive target. Intelligence is always diminishing. Once you're told, you know, hey, there could be a person here, you're running against the clock because you don't know how dated that information is. So we call those time-sensitive targets. So we got that information kind of late in the evening. And by midnight, we knew we were a go on that mission, and we loaded the helicopters and we flew directly to the target and landed, ended up taking down the very first target, which they were not there. So we thought we had missed him. Found a whole bunch of explosives and found a whole bunch of evidence that the enemy had been there, but no signs of the enemy. We thought it was going to be a quiet night, which sometimes happens in battle. But our snipers started noticing that there were a whole bunch of individuals moving around on another building about 150 yards away. And they watched 5 individuals run out of the building across the street and hide in some vegetation, which is suspicious activity, obviously. And those are things that we had seen before. My team leader said, hey, I want you to take your team, you know, walk these individuals down. Let's find out who they are and question them. To make a long story short, our enemy leader had been in the first house that we were in right now. He had moved to the house that was about 150 yards away that we were now moving on. And his security detail had set up a very, very well-staged enemy ambush. We estimate about 15 enemy shooters with 2 large machine guns. And my team and I walked right into this ambush.
Oh my gosh.
And my medic was initially hit, a fellow SEAL, also a medic. He was initially hit. He took a round right below the knee, which almost took his leg off. One of our other guys ran forward to grab him and tried to move him back behind us. There was kind of there was one tree and a large, like, John Deere tractor tire. And he dragged our medic and himself back. He himself was shot 3 times while doing this. I was out front and I was trying to shoot and lay down fire for the guys. And it was at this point I had both machine guns turned on me, and I was hit 8 times between my body armor and my body. I took 2 rounds in the left elbow, which in the moment I thought had shot my arm off. I took rounds off my weapon, my right side plate. I took rounds off my helmet. I had my left night vision tube shot off. I turned around to try and move back to our guys, and that's when I caught a round in the face that hit me right in front of the ear, traveled through my face, took off my nose, blew out my right cheekbone, vaporized my orbital floor. It broke all the bones above my eye, and it knocked me out. I was pinned down in front of my guys. They continued to fight the enemy. What happened is this very intense gunfight occurred with me pinned down on the ground in between. Literally bullets were traveling about 8 inches above me. And I came to probably, we don't know the timeline. We know the entire gunfight lasted about 40 minutes. So I was shot in the first 5 minutes. So give or take 10 minutes being unconscious. When I finally came to, woke up, saw the gunfire traveling over me, realized I was in a really bad situation. In a Lowland fire, I called out to my team leader. He realized, holy smokes, Red's still alive. And they
Nice.
started, I owe my life to my teammates. I owe my life to an Air Force aircraft called an AC-130 gunship that brought in the closest fire mission, meaning they brought rounds in from the aircraft to the ground. And in military speak, we call it extreme danger close. So meaning the rounds were so close they could have killed us. As a matter of fact, the first 2 times they said they wouldn't bring the rounds in because they were too afraid that they would kill us. And my team leader did an amazing job coordinating this. In between fire, he ran forward and got me and pulled me back to where they were, got a tourniquet on my mangled arm, and really saved my life. But the whole time this was happening, there were several things, and we'll come full circle now to a little bit of the overcome mindset. I knew I had lost a lot of blood. I'd lost a lot of blood between my arm and my face and my injuries. And we go through a lot of trauma medicine and special operations training. We're probably trained up to the level of a basic emergency medical technician that would ride around an ambulance. And I knew all the signs. I knew that I was going to what we call hypovolemic shock from blood loss. I was struggling to think, I was struggling to breathe. And in these final moments, I was beginning to realize that this was when I was still pinned down. And I was beginning to realize that I may die here. I was dying. I was literally bleeding out and dying. And there were several things that went through my mind that I talked to people a lot in my talks. Number one, not once when I was laying there dying did I think about stuff. In this life, we're all focused on stuff. And trust me, I like stuff. I love my house. I love, some of the nice things we have. But I also recognize every day that all that stuff can be gone in a second. Relationships and the people you love are all you're going to care about in the final moments of your life, because that's all I thought about. I thought about my wife and kids and how I would give anything to have another moment just to say I love you to them. And it was at that point that I called out to the big man above and said, hey, I really need help. I need strength. And that enabled me to have some strength, which I can't explain. But I will tell you this thought popped into my head in that moment. And the thought was this: stay awake to stay alive. And if you've ever anyone who's been severely injured or something bad has happened, you reach a point where physiologically your body wants to shut down and you will become extremely fatigued. And that's what happened. I wanted to go to sleep. I wanted to just let go and go to sleep. But this voice said, stay awake to stay alive. And I knew that if I made it to the military hospital, the military emergency room, I knew a statistic, from operating overseas, that if we got our soldiers or wounded warriors to that hospital and they still had a pulse, they had a 90% chance of making it home alive. So that was my focus, stay awake, stay alive, stay awake, stay alive. And this starts to, there's so many nuances to this story, but the bottom line is that's exactly what happened. My teammates managed to get me on the medevac helicopter, medevac me out. Actually, I'll tell everybody's always amazed. And I give credit to the big guy above. I went from not being able to move a muscle to when the medevac helicopter finally came in, my team leader helped me up and I walked 75 yards and got on that helicopter under my own power. Maybe not my own power, I'd say there was a little help there. But that is a lot of the overcome mindset. It is this mindset that says, I'm not going to give in. I'm going to push. And there's so many things that I try and relate this to. I know there's many of you that are saying, oh my God, there's no way I could ever relate to this story. But you can't imagine the bullets and bombs of battle. You can't imagine the chaos and the pain. But the reality is, and that's what I talk about in this life, is I survived this vicious enemy ambush, but everybody gets ambushed in life. It may not be the bullets and bombs of battle, but it is the bullets and bombs of life. And when you're on the X, and the X is what we talk about, the point of attack, the point of the crisis, the point of the incident, we all feel as overwhelmed as I did. And there are going to be times, just like I did, that you thought or you think you're going to die, or you think it'll be the end of this relationship, or it'll be the end of your business, or it'll be the end of, whatever it is. And it is in those moments where we have the ability to drive forward and push ourselves a little further and to get off that X, as we use the term in special operations lingo. And that is everything I speak on today. So I owe my life to my teammates. I owe my life to the Air Force aircraft overhead. But from that point forward, it changed my outlook on life and how every one of us will go through life ambushes, and how you can build a mindset, an overcome mindset, to be prepared to get off that X and drive forward to be successful.
Wow. Yeah, I had to hold back tears on that. Jason, that is, wow. Yes. I mean, you talk about laying there and wanting an extra moment with your wife and kids, and knowing that you're going to die. And that's why I talk about the bravery of our soldiers, because I think that that's probably not the first time that you ever thought that, because when you go into the Army, I think you have to be willing to lay your life down. So we're so grateful for people like you and the soldiers that protect the country. So right off the bat, I'm going to say thank you for that. Thank you for your service, and thank you for what you've done for the country. And but I can only relate to this from what I've seen in the movies. And I know what you just said about stay awake to stay alive. And I've seen them say, come on, keep awake. Talk to me. But not always they can, because I've seen that, and 2 seconds later, the person, is dead. So you can't always stay awake to stay alive. But the fact that, you knew that you had to, and you dig deep somehow and kept awake, and maybe the fact that, and again, the bullet could have gone through your brain. You said it went through your nose, with your cheekbones, and I guess when you get shot in the head instead of getting a shot in the face. So yes, God was definitely there, and maybe deflected that a little bit. And so so that was amazing. But one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation with you is because I shouldn't say we can all, like you said, not very many people are going to be on the battlefield unless someone is listening here that, was in the Army, or, a SEAL or something. But most of us are going to be ambushed. So in your conversation, you said, well, all of us have like 5 ambushes in life, and I started counting mine. How many more am I supposed to have? And my daughter, I think she's been through but 2. So I'm thinking, okay, I mean, I didn't talk to her about this, but life ambushes, and you talk about the fact that the ambush could be something as big. You put the top one, the death of a child, to maybe the bottom one, maybe a divorce or something. But so I want to talk about why you think, first of all, that we get 5, and taking the ambush from, the Army and bringing it to our lives. Tell us about what you define as a life ambush, and why do you say we all get about 5?
Yeah, Myrna. So the 5 came about from interviewing people and just kind of an informal poll that we took. Mm-hmm. In order to understand, though, we have to break them. I define there are 3 types of life ambushes. There are micro ambushes, there are mini ambushes, and then there are major life ambushes. And when I talk about the average of 5, those are the majors. And the majors are devastating. They will forever leave scars. And let me reverse this. I'll come back, and we'll come back full circle to the majors. The interesting thing, let's talk a little bit about the X. The X, the point of attack, the point of the incident, the point of the crisis. It's the point of any adversity. Everybody in life finds himself on the X. We get on the X in business. We get on the X in our personal lives. and the most dangerous X we get on is the one up here. This is the most dangerous battlefield you'll ever walk.
Yeah.
And we all walk it every single day. From Navy SEALs to all you moms out there. Everyone walks on this X at some point, usually during the day. But I will tell you, that is the most dangerous one, because people get stuck on the X all the time. In battle, we were taught you have to get off the X as quickly as possible, because the longer you sit on the X, the harder it is to move forward. And this is true in any aspect of your life. If it's a mental ambush and you're stuck on the X in your mind, and we all get stuck there, these are these micro ambushes. They come every day. It's that little voice in your head that says, you're not good enough. You're not strong enough. You're too poor. You're too the wrong race, creed, color, gender, demographic, wherever you're from. All of those are lies and mental ambushes that stick us to the that pin you to the X. And I meet so many people in this life who get stuck on that X, that these micro ambushes, and they start to believe them to the point that they never achieve their full potential, because they've now sat on that X in their mind, and they won't start their own business. They won't commit to a relationship. They won't, maybe they had a divorce or something happened, and they won't love again because they tell themselves, oh, I can never move past this. Well, that's a lie. It's all in your mind. So those are micro ambushes, and they come all the time. The formula is the same for all of these. You have to get off the X as quickly as possible. You know, my motto, I overcome, we drive forward, we get off that X. The second level of ambush is what I call a mini ambush. And these are, I find these fascinating because I meet people all the time who they'll use the phrase, oh, I had a bad day. And I'm fascinated with this because I'll always say, well, tell me about your bad day. And 90% of the time when people use this, and we're all human, we all will use this phrase. I've tried to erase it from my vocabulary. I actually have an entire line of clothing called No Bad Days. It's about this mindset of, hey, I'm still here. Because most of the time when we use that phrase, I had a bad day, the reality is it's merely a schedule disruption. Something came along and disrupted your schedule. Your day did not unfold in the manner you thought it was going to, because you had a flat tire, you know, who knows what happened. But the thing that I've come to find about these mini ambushes that come along that usually translate into I'm having a bad day is, if we fast forwarded a year, 2 years, you won't even remember it. Sure. Won't even remember it. It's not even really a blip on the radar. It's just a schedule disruption, and that's all it is. And that's where you have to change your mindset. A, you have to get off the X and drive forward from that schedule disruption. But B, you have to recognize you are still alive. If you woke up this morning, it's a good day. It's up to you to make it a great day. It doesn't mean you're not going to have tough days or hard days, but the great thing about still being alive and still, when you are alive, and you still are cognizant up here, whatever problem you're facing, whatever schedule disruption, you have the ability to look for solutions. And that creates opportunities. And it doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It'll be hard, but it's merely a schedule disruption. Whether it's a week, whether it's a month, whether it's several months, still a schedule disruption. And you have the ability to navigate through it. Now we get to the majors, the major life ambushes. And these are the biggies. Like Myrna, you talked about earlier. At the low level, it's a divorce. At the highest level, what I've seen, it's loss of a child. And the interesting thing, when these major life ambushes occur, and I'll hit in between also, just for if some of you are still wrapping your head around this, this could be personal or professional failure. This could be, you made a huge mistake. And, I know individuals that have had affairs, and that affair came to the forefront. And, well, guess what? That's a major life ambush. Now their spouse.
And then they lost their family. Yes.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I mean, those things are devastating.
Yes.
And that's the reality. Sometimes major life ambushes, we did it to ourselves. Yes. And now we have to navigate through the journey of figuring out how to drive forward. It could be life-threatening illness or injury to you or someone you love. It could be sexual trauma to you or someone you love. It could be the loss of a loved one. And then, like we talked about, that highest one, the loss of a child.
Mhm.
Most people we polled have about 5 of the of one of any one of those in their lifetime. I've seen people with more. I know people that have had 10. I myself, I'm getting ready to turn 48. I've had 4 major life ambushes. Uh,
Wow.
so we'll see. You know, I'd love to get through life with 4,
Just 4.
but
That's what
you
I
know,
said. When I heard you, I'm thinking, I'm starting counting mine.
yeah. But here's the majors are hard. They're devastating. And I tell people they will leave permanent scars. They will leave permanent physical, mental, emotional, or deep financial scars. And when we look back on those major life ambushes, you know, the micros, you know, they're in your head. The schedule disruptions, like I said, a couple years later, you'll barely remember them. The majors you'll always remember. You will look back on, and it's still painful to think about. But here is the amazing thing about major life ambushes. I talk about in the TED Talk I gave, major life ambushes frequently are the end moments. It is the end of something that occurred in your life. It may be the end of a relationship. It may be the end of a job. It may be the end of your health, your innocence. Whatever it is, oftentimes it is the end. But what the amazing thing is, and what the overcome mindset is I'm going to figure out how to drive forward. And when we figure out how to drive forward, no matter how painful it is, the ones that I've been through, so often it becomes a new beginning. And when you get to the other side of that journey, when you climb through the pain and the misery and the storms and the darkness, I can't tell you, probably 95% of the people I know that get to the other side say, you know, it really was hard. I don't ever want to go through it again, but it's one of the best things that ever happened to me because I grew and got better. And major life ambushes build on themselves. Every major life ambush you have, no matter how painful they are, they help build an overcome mindset. You can't just throw a switch and suddenly have an overcome mindset. So when these bad things happen, I don't want to tell you to celebrate that they happen. I know that that's probably a stretch, but instead just lean into it and say, okay, I know I have to get to the other side. I know I have to overcome. I know I have to get off the X, but at some point somewhere out there, the sun still shines, and I will find that sunlight once again. And when I do, it's going to be a new path. I try to explain to people with major life ambushes, a lot of times people waste a lot of time focused on, I want back what I lost. I want to repair this relationship. I want my job back. I want, you know, my business collapsed and I lost all this money and I want back the lifestyle I had before, and or severely injured like me, and I want my health back. And the reality is sometimes that's just not true. And what we have to focus on is, how do I get to my new 100%? I may not be able to fix what's broken, but you know, so many people are focused on the past. We have to focus on the here and now, and how do we shape our future? And when we do that, that becomes our new path. That becomes our new 100%. So,
yeah, I mean, that is so true. We are, you know, you're saying it a little differently than I normally say it, but you know, in this show, I speak to a lot of people that, in fact, I was just listening to a podcast this morning, and they were talking about pain into purpose, because your pain becomes your purpose. You know, when you were going through it, you wanted to die. When you were going through it, you didn't think you were going to be able to live. But once you finally get through it, you know, whether you went kicking and screaming, or you have an overcome mindset, or just time, because, you know, they say time heals all wounds. Whatever it is, when you got to the other side, you recognize that is basically how God maybe streamlined you too. In fact, my episode that's coming out this week, I'm talking about your suffering as part of God's plan. And the reason I say that is because, you know, we just went through Easter, and the cross is, you know, a lot of us have crosses to bear. And when you bear that cross, then it turns into your enlightenment. So yes, sometimes the pain is very difficult, but once you've overcome it, you're right. When you've overcome it, you are you become stronger. You know, in my culture, you know, my grandmother would say things like, what doesn't kill you make you stronger. And that's basically what you have this message in this following, because you overcome, and you said it made you stronger. So
And Myrna, if I can add something there, you know, most people who haven't really followed me, you know, they've just heard about me through maybe a podcast or something. You know, what people don't realize, they think that my battlefield injuries are like, oh, that must be the worst life ambush you went through, but it's not true. My story is pretty deep, and my first book, called The Trident, it's called The Trident: The Forging and Reforging of a Navy SEAL Leader. And the reason it was titled that was because years before I got wounded, I failed as a young leader. And I allowed, like many, I don't see this often in young women. I see it in young men who achieve success at a young age. I see it in professional athletes. I see it in special operations individuals. I see it in young, very successful business individuals. I got a big head. Ego and arrogance got the best of me. And I thought I was like God's gift to leadership. And I stopped listening to people and was really kind of going down the path of, hey, you know, do as I say, not as I do. Not setting a good example as a leader, and was making mistakes. And all of that culminated with a bad call I made on a mission in Afghanistan. And when I made that call, there were guys in the SEAL teams who said, kick that guy out, get rid of him. And it was a very long, hard road. Thankfully, I had some leaders who believed in me and said, hey, we're going to give you a second chance. But there were many things I had to go through to earn back my second chance. I had to, I had awards rescinded, so I had awards taken away. I was sent to U.S. Army Ranger School, which was probably one of the best things that could have happened to me, because it humbled me and made me focus on what it is. As a matter of fact, a lot of the lessons I teach on leadership come straight from my time at Ranger School, where I was kind of rebuilding myself. And then it was those 2 years that I really had to earn back the trust and credibility of my teammates. It is the hardest. Myrna, I want to tell you, when I failed in this is a true story, and people know that often when I speak on stages, I tell this story. I was so at rock bottom when I failed as a leader in Afghanistan. I went back to my room and I put a gun in my mouth, and I was going to kill myself. And the only thing, once again, I think the big man intervened, because he kind of slapped me in the back of the head, and across my chair was a picture of my wife and kids. And he was like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Like, what example will you set for them if you make the decision? And once again, I talk about the end moments. In my mind, I thought it was the end. And I went and sought out the special operations chaplain, and he was like, you know, you don't know what's going to happen, but no matter what, this becomes a new beginning. And it's up to you to figure out what that new beginning is. He was right. And it was the hardest road I've ever walked. It took 2.5 years to rebuild my reputation. But that hard road, that major life ambush, from rock bottom, gun in mouth, thinking about taking my life, built me back up to when I was injured on the battlefield. I'll never forget, I was in the hospital and I thought, you know what? You just walked the hardest road you've ever walked. You can do this too.
Yeah.
So it sets us up for success.
Yes. 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 Wow. So that's amazing. Now, one of the things you also said that I'm curious to hear, but you said that life ambushes leaves clues. So I can understand the ambush of a divorce leave clues. And I'm asking the question and I'm answering it myself, but take us through, for instance, let's put this in a way that, you know, you mentioned a little bit of it, that when you walked in to this ambush on the battlefield, you noticed certain things, right? And you kind of ignored it. You just thought that they were gone. So how does that missing an ambush on the battlefield and missing an ambush in real life, give us the correlation?
we call them, so I have an online course that I teach called the Point Man for Life course. And point men are, there are navigators, there are leaders in the military. They're very talented individuals who get us where we need to go. And one of their other amazing skills is they watch the world around them for signs, or what we call indicators, that there is potentially an ambush or attack, signs of the enemy. And what I talk to people is about, you have to be the point man for your own life. You have to be the one that sets your course, that understands where you're going, and we're constantly watching. So these indicators are the things that many of us, through normal human activity, either choose to ignore or, procrastinate. We do all kinds of things. I mean, I break these things down. Sometimes it's a blatant sign, and I use a stop sign in my course. Like, we just ignore it. No different than somebody not paying attention and they drive through an intersection and miss that stop sign and they get hit by a car. Well, afterward they're like, yeah, you missed this stop sign. That's a really blatant one, but it happens all the time. It happens in businesses. It happens in relationships. If your spouse is constantly saying, hey, we've lost our intimacy, or hey, we're not talking as much anymore. If we continue to ignore or just flat out not pay attention to that.
Yeah, well, that's one of the ones I figured out, because there's signs there.
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they're more subtle. Sometimes they can be health. I know a lot of people who have health issues and like, oh, this has really been bothering me, but I'm just going to ignore it. And I'm amazed by how many people will do this because they're afraid of what could happen. And I tell people, you cannot procrastinate, deny, or ignore. Those are dangerous things to do, because you are setting yourself up for a life ambush. And so many times I meet people who I give the example of a friend who was overweight. He was a successful business guy, but he was overweight. He wasn't taking care of himself physically. And the doctor was like, hey, you really need to start taking care of yourself. You need to start working out. You need to, watch your nutrition. You're a ticking time bomb for a heart attack. And, he talked to me about working out, and I said, yeah, man, you can do this or do that. And he never really did it. And then like a year later, he had a heart attack, and he was like, how could this have happened? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, the signs were there. Like, you ignored them.
Tell you all the time. Yes.
And so many people do this in life. I walked into a major life, one of the third major life ambush I walked into. After I got out of the military, I had my own business, and I got into a project with a friend and a businessman, and because we all kind of knew each other, and I was new in business, I knew we needed agreement, and I kept kicking it down the road, and the project totally fell apart. And because we did not have the original agreement that I had procrastinated, even though I knew I needed to do it, I never did it. And it turned into a big he said, she said, and it turned into a huge mess and a lawsuit. And but it was my fault. I look back on it and I know I knew that agreement would have solved that problem. It would have clearly laid out all the expectations. So those are the things that I talk about, that you have to be aware, not procrastinate, take action on the things that need to be done. Even if you're afraid, like it's a health thing, or maybe your relationship is having issues and you guys are not talking to each other, you need to come back and talk to each other. Even if you're afraid, that communication is key. Knowledge is power. Communication is critical. And you have to do these things. Because I tell you what, sticking your head in the sand and pretending it'll just fix itself, it's only going to get worse. And what will happen is eventually you will walk into that ambush and find yourself on the X.
Yeah. And then you'll say, I never expected coming. Right. You're very right. Yes. So that was pretty good. Now, when I asked the question, I had in the back of my mind something I've heard you talk about twice. I follow you on YouTube and on Instagram. On YouTube, you told a story about getting home one day and putting your gown down and then walking to the mailbox, and somebody came up to you and you were saying that was bad because you weren't prepared. And then, because that could have been a bad person. And then I heard you just yesterday on Instagram talking about being in an elevator, and you noticed that the guy beside you in an elevator had a gun magazine. and you weren't in position or something. So when we're talking about so is that kind of an ambush? Can we use that again as an ambush, not paying attention?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially, I mean, I'm getting ready to teach our second, what I call the Overcome and Survive workshop. I mean, I, I'm 48, or getting ready to turn 48, and I've never seen, um, the level of violence and the level of just individuals who just have no respect for life.
Yes,
It is dangerous times, and people
yes,
are nobody wants to talk anymore. Like, it just seems like if there is any kind of disagreement, people will go
yes,
get a gun and shoot you.
yes.
We've just seen this over and over. I mean,
Yep,
I saw the heartbreaking story the other day where some young kid went up and knocked
yes,
on the door of the
yes,
house. I think it was
yes,
in Missouri, and
yes,
they just
yes.
shot through the door and killed
Everyone is
this young
talking
kid
about
who was
that.
looking for his brother and sister. So
Yep, yep,
um,
yep.
that's terrible situational awareness. It's also driven by fear and all these other things. So I teach situational awareness in this society to be aware. And a lot of that has to do with awareness and reaction time. We live in this world where we're all stuck. I don't have my cell phone in here, but we're all stuck in our cell phones. And I can't tell you how many people I watch walking around and they're
Yeah,
totally just absorbed in
yes,
that cell phone,
yep,
which means they're not paying attention to the world around them. We need, yeah, I'm highly trained. I try to train other people up to a basic level. It's one of the things that we do in our Overcome and Survive workshop. But the biggest thing you can do is awareness and to get out of that situation before it ever occurs.
mhm,
So you see things before. This is, if we're talking about leading into the ambush, you're noticing the indicators before it ever develops into an ambush. You don't allow yourself to get on the X. You don't walk into that situation. So sometimes you can't help it. And that's where awareness and a little bit of training. And I really encourage everybody out there to have some level of training. For you, um, I know that your target audience, Myrna, is women. I know there are a
mhm.
lot of women who are afraid of firearms, but I really encourage. I mean, we live in a country that whether you agree with it or not, unfortunately, a firearm can be the great equalizer if someone is coming after you and trying to break into your house or trying to rape or take your kids or whatever it is. There is a
Mhm.
level of training that needs to exist with that, and I firmly believe you should get that. But there's so many stories that I've read about women or even families who are not prepared, and unfortunately there are evil people in this world, and so trying to avoid those ambushes come with training and awareness.
Okay, right. Yeah, situational awareness. Okay, so that's what you call it. Awesome. All right. Well, you mentioned about your book called Appointment Planner. And I started to get it because it was so amazing when I heard you talk about it. But I always like to have my interviews fresh, so I didn't get it. I would definitely go and pick it up afterwards. But you talk about making yourself your own point man. So talk about your appointment planner, and what are the warning signs and things like that that someone needs to be the appointment for, and what you hope people to walk away with after getting the planner.
Yeah, so everything I teach, it comes from, I didn't make it up. I didn't just pull these things out. I mean, there are things that I've applied into my life, and then later I'll kind of, peel back the onion and be like, okay, how did this work for me? And then put this into context. And the point man for the idea of the point man planner, this point man for life program, came from the things that I had put in my life. There were also things I saw in the military, and some of these things are interchangeable. I just use a military special operations term. So the idea came around this, that there's 4 point man principles that everybody should follow. And the first one, what makes successful point men, or what makes successful SEALs in the case from my background, but also what makes anybody successful. Number one is relentless belief in mission. Mission is synonymous with purpose. So I know a lot of people who don't really know who they are. The beginning of the Point Man Planner starts with, what are your values? and I meet a lot of people who don't truly know their values. They will throw out the cliche values that everybody likes to throw out: faith, fitness, family. But they are the individual that's never in the gym.
Right.
They aren't doing much with their family. They're sure not in church. So those aren't really their values. Your values are what
Right.
drive your decision making.
Right. Right.
So
So you don't think people can have values and just ignore them, huh? Then it's not their
big
value.
time. And sometimes there are people who don't want to admit, like, I'll admit one of my values is oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Attention. I like being on a stage and talking to people. That makes me feel good.
Mhm.
You have to be very careful to find the balance, though, between that you're not, sacrificing your morality, if you will, for attention and things like that. So these are things that I talk about: understanding your values, because your values will drive you. Um, you know, Meredith, you have to enjoy a little bit of being in the spotlight, or else you would not be doing what you were doing, but you're able to give back and help so many people. So understanding our values helps us establish our mission. And when I talk about mission, this becomes where we want to go and who we truly want to be. I want to be regarded as a leader that is helping others to be better versions of themselves. That's part of my mission. And when I know that, when I know my values and I understand my mission, I now am able to build my life around that. It should be the decision-making process for anything I do. Hey, I've been asked to do this. Well, does it fall into my mission? If it doesn't, then I probably shouldn't do it. So relentless belief in mission, number one. Number two becomes a clearly defined destination and course. And really, destination is your long-term goals. Where do you want to go? 10 years from now, where do you want to be? What level of...
I need to interject there. That was one of the most beautiful things when you said that when you're on a mission, you're to pinpoint the exact location. I love that. So anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so we have to be very specific, because most people are
Yes.
not. They're just, oh, I want to be rich. Okay, well, what does that mean? I want a big house. Okay, well, where and what does it look like? We have to be very specific to establish, because if it's not very specific, then we can't establish all the steps to get there. And that becomes our course. The course becomes all the steps required to get to where we're going. And this is constantly changing. Our lives change, our hopes change, our desires change. So, we're evaluating that, but we have to know what is our long-term goals and our short-term goals. And I break those into three categories: personally, professionally, and physical. We got to take care of ourselves physical. Number three is risk assessment and situational awareness. So that becomes, now that we've established our course, we know our mission, we have our purpose. Well, how do we avoid the ambushes, or at least try and reduce them? And a constant checking: where are we at? Are we on course? Okay, we got off course. How do we get back on course? So I have tools in the Point Man Planner to help people with that. And it's a daily, weekly, monthly, and quarterly planner so that you stay on course. And then the last one is, how do I get off the X? An overcome mindset to get off the X. Because guess what? Life ambushes are coming. I tell people, you're either in a life ambush, you're coming out of a life ambush, or there's one on the horizon. And so many people get knocked off course and then lose their momentum, and their goals went out the window. Well, this planner reminds you, hey, this is who I am. Even though this bad thing happened, this is who I am. So I want to get back on course. This is where I'm going to go. So that's the Point Man Planner, and that's what we're trying to do, is help people to, identify where they want to go, know who they are, and follow that path to success.
Yes, I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. To me, one of the most valuable things that you just talked about there is, an ambush is coming. And if you're aware of it, then when it comes and it knocks you in the face, then you are mentally prepared. So, hey, you know what? Once you're alive, you're going to have challenges, right? Once you're alive, things are going to come up. And yeah, you've got to learn to either flow with them like a river, or start pedaling upstream in order to... Yes, I love that. But one of the things that you said is that, for instance, when you're in a mission, let's say you're going to Afghanistan, they're not going to say just Afghanistan. You were the point on the map is specific. It's not around, it's like specific. So I love that. I love how you can learn so much from your training as a Navy SEAL and an Army, and you bring it into life. So even the term ambush, who normally talks about the word ambush? You know, you talk about challenges and you talk about life events, but when you put that word ambush, it tells you you're not going to see it coming. It's going to knock you down, right? You're going to be
And it's so
walking in
true.
and
We've
you're going
all
to be
felt
blowing
it.
up. Go ahead. What was
And
that?
it's so true. We've all felt it. We felt those. Oh my God. I now I know I've been ambushed. I know what this feels like. They're
Yes.
painful. They hurt.
Yes,
Bullets
yes.
and
And
bombs
the
of
worst part
life.
of it is that you don't see it coming.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes we do though, because we look back later and we're like, man, I saw those signs and I didn't take the action.
Yeah, you know, I mentioned to you that my daughter had 2 ambushes, and her first ambush was suicide of her fiance. And you know, her and the family ignored the signs because the signs were there. The signs were there. So I see exactly what you mean. Don't ignore the signs. And now I don't ignore the signs. I don't ignore the signs. A lot of times people see these things and they don't want to see anything about it. Yes. Be wrong, you know,
Yep.
instead of ignoring them and then saying, I wish I had, you know.
Yep.
So yeah, Jason, this was amazing. Thank you so much. I loved our conversation. I know that you guys have probably never heard about this before, which is one of the reasons I wanted to share it with you. So as we wrap up, Jason, tell us how they can get a hold of your appointment planner. I know you sell it on your website, because I looked for it on Amazon, I didn't see it. So
it is back on Amazon. It was
back on Amazon now.
Yeah. So
Okay.
thank you. And I'll yeah, we have our online course. I have 2 online courses right now. So if you go to my website, jasonredmond.com, that's where you can find everything. It's got, you know, my links to social media if you're into that. Every Monday I put out a video called Monday Muster, and it's just positive content on leadership and positivity and just how we navigate this life. And that gets a lot of great traction. That's on my YouTube channel. We put that on our socials. You can get my books. I have 3, The Trident, Overcome, and then The Point Man Planner. My wife and I hopefully are, we have written a relationship book. So we're really excited about that. And we're hoping to get that out before the end of the year. And we're really blessed. We have been together, married now for 22 years, together for 24. And we've been through it all. You know, we run our business together. I've been injured, all the issues. So it's called Invincible Marriage, because we have been through some major life ambushes, and we share our lessons on how to continue to have that invincible marriage. So that's coming. The online courses are on there. The Point Man for Life course. I will give Myrna a discount code. And if anybody wants that Point Man for Life course, it'll be 50% off for you. That course, for anybody that listens and says, hey, I'd like to get that. I also have my Overcome Mindset course. And then, yeah, I'm just trying to get out there and continue to spread that word. One of my mottos as a leader is leaders are the light in the darkness. A great parent is a light in the darkness. Parents are leaders. When I talk about leadership, the principles that I teach are the same across the board. Whether you run a business, whether you run a division of a company, whatever it is, my principles of leadership are the same. And all of it comes down to is how can we positive and help people? And that's what leaders do. So yeah, we have our new shirt called Be the Light. Because that's what leaders do.
I like that.
Yeah.
All right. So the website is jasonredmond.com. And everything is there, probably links to your books. Yes, I was very impressed by the Appointment Planner. So yes, I'm definitely gonna pick that up. So the 50% off is for the course.
Yeah, the course, and that comes with a Point Man planner and a poster. So it's all together. It's pretty much everything that I've ever taught on. I mean, it gets deep into it's 14 modules, and it walks you through values and defining your mission and long-term destination and short-term goals and all of this. So it's everything in one place. If you're looking, I often tell people, if you feel like you're a ship that's adrift at sea, it's a great course for you to help you identify where you want to go.
You want to go. Yes, yes. And help you along the way, because a lot of times people, okay, let me back up. Most people don't know where they want to go. And there's a few people that know where they want to go, but still need help getting there. They know the destination, but they don't know how to put the port in. But, I was just listening again to The Strangest Secret. Who wrote that again? I forgot. But he said that 95% of people don't know where they want to go. So yes.
And everybody thinks
Earl Nightingale, right? Right.
And everybody thinks we all have it figured out. They're like, that Navy SEAL, he's got it figured out. I don't. I go back to, this is who I am. I go back to this, and that helps me and reminds me this is where I'm going. But every one of us have doubts and those little micro ambushes, man, every day. Mine will tell me, who are you to go stand on a stage and tell people, your thoughts, the difference between successful people and non-successful people. Successful people say, okay, I hear that little voice, but I'm going to continue to drive forward.
Going anyway. Right. Yep. Exactly. Yep. Exactly. You don't get knocked off. Yes. Yeah. I absolutely love your story, Jason. When you're telling your story about laying on the battlefield, there's like tears in my eyes, because that is a terrible place to be, as far as thinking that you're dying and thinking that you're never going to see your wife and kids again. And the fact that you were able to stay awake, to stay alive, knew in your mind that if you were able to get to the medic, then you've got a 90% chance of surviving. Oh, that is amazing, But you wear your battle scars. So, when people look at you, they can see that you've been through the battle. And I'm so grateful to talk to you. I'm so grateful that you share your overcome mindset and overcome adversity, because and also make us realize that, hey, the Bible says it's not if trouble comes, but when, right? So trouble is going to come, and people always, are not prepared for it. It's like they think that they're going to born and die, and they're just going to, sail in a sailboat, and things are not going to happen. So once you, like they said, a mind that's been expanded can never go back. Now that we know that there's going to be ambushes, the average is 5. Maybe you get 2 or 3, or maybe you get, like you said, 10, right? But you know that they're going to come. And what you do, you prepare yourself to say that, yes, when they come, whether it's a divorce, like you said, the hardest one is the death of a child, because I'm not sure how you can overcome that, but again, you find a way. I've interviewed people on the show where, they had a son commit suicide, and she's learned to work with him in the spiritual realm, whatever you do to get back up. And I love what you said about, don't look too much at the ending, look at the beginning. And this is all things that people teach, right? Don't look too much at the closed door, because every closed door, God is opening another door. You know what I mean? We can say it in so many ways, but thank you for making it succinct and making us understand that, it's the end of something, but it's the beginning of another thing. So love it. Thank you so much, Jason, for coming on the show. I'm going to have a transcript of my conversation with Jason on the show page, which is blog.myhelps.us. You can, if you're watching this if you're listening to this on iTunes, you can also go on to YouTube. It will be there. And I'll link out to Jason's YouTube channel. I link out to his books. I'll also link out to his website, and we'll have the discount code that he's talking about for his courses, his course on the show page. So listen, I hope that you guys were, inspired and motivated and by this conversation. And thank you so much, Jason. I usually ask any last words before we wrap up. Any last words?
I'll just say it's, this life is hard. Bad things happen to good people all the time. And an overcome mindset says, okay, I know that might happen. I'm going to continue to live my life. I'm going to live greatly, but I'm also not going to allow that to totally knock me off course. I'm just going to continue to drive forward. An overcome mindset does that. It's a mindset of optimism and positivity, as opposed to a lot of the world we live in right now that's just negative and dark. Be the light.
Yes. And you said you have clothing. Is that on your website?
We do, yeah. Our clothing with Overcome and our No Bad Days, and yeah, we just released that
Yes.
Be the Light shirt. So
yes, and you have them for women as well as men.
We do, men and women, absolutely.
Okay, good. So I'll definitely get me some. Yes, love it. Yes, okay, Jason. Well, listen, thank you so much. I do appreciate you being on the show. I do appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us. And thank you guys for tuning in to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life. Hey, if this wasn't a transformation of your mind, then I don't know what was. So thank you guys for tuning in. Until next time, namaste.